In the evening on June 7th, 1992, Janis and Stu McCall were starting to worry. Their daughter Stacy had just graduated the day before and had gone out with her friend Suzie to some graduation parties happening that night. They were expecting a call the next morning, and as the hours crept into the next day with no word from Stacy, they were getting concerned. After hours of trying to call their daughter, Janis decided to go to Suzie's house to see what was going on. There was no answer at the door. She went into the house and didn't find anything amiss. Stacy, Suzie, and Suzie's mom were gone. Hi, everyone. Thanks for stopping by our table of disappointment. This is How They Got Away, the show where we discuss the unsatisfying endings to your favorite unsolved or unpunished true crime and corporate greed stories. I'm your host for today, Annalise, and I'm here with my co-host.
Oh my god! It's Kelsey.
The look of shock on your face.
I was like, oh, she's doing like a long, fun intro. This is gonna be fun. And then I was like, I don't know where this is going. And then you're like, oh, she goes to the house. I'm like, oh, and they're dead in the house. And then there's nobody in the house. And I'm like, it's like the opposite of the call is coming from inside the home.
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh
it's
God.
an interesting case. It's fascinating.
I'm hooked.
It's
I'm in.
unsolved
I'm
like most of our
hooked.
cases, but let's go. So
Oh my
let's
God.
take it back a bit to June 6th, the day before. Our case takes place in Springfield, Missouri, a town in kind of the Bible Belt of the South. Stacy McCall, 18 years old, and Suzie Streeter, 19, were both graduating from Kickapoo High School.
That's a fun name.
These girls, it's a fun name. These girls had been friends since second grade. Stacy had actually moved when she was 11, but had moved back a couple of years later. And during that last semester of high school, they became really good friends again. They kind of rekindled that.
That's so cute. Oh.
Yeah. So they crossed the stage for their diplomas at Missouri State University's Hammond Student Center, looking forward to the future. Stacy was looking forward to joining a sorority at Southwest Missouri State University. She was saving up her money working as a receptionist at Springfield Gymnastics and modeling wedding dresses at a friend of the family's bridal shop. She's gorgeous.
I was never. I'm not gonna say I'm not gorgeous because you can tell by my voice I'm very hot. But I'm also not like, oh, and I just casually model wedding dresses on the side hot.
Let me show you
I
a
also
quick
don't have a
picture.
family friend who owns a wedding dress shop, so.
There's some shadows in this, but so on the very left is Stacy with
Oh my
brown
God.
hair, and then next to her is Suzie, which she has kind of like blonde with a reddish chink kind of hair at the moment, and then that's Suzie's mom on the other side. But these are the three women.
Oh man. I feel like the photos always make it really, really real and sad because you're like, oh wow, those are whole ass people and not just like a narrative. We can't just stop right here, Annalise. They just graduate and then they go to college and that's the end of the story.
Yeah, they graduated. They're really exciting. They get there, but that's unfortunately not what happens. So Suzie was going to go to cosmetology school to be a cosmetologist like her mom. Very exciting. They're looking forward to the future. Big things are going to happen. After the ceremony, they had taken some pictures, they had dinner with their family, and then they decided they were going to go to a couple of graduation parties happening that night. So the plan for that night was to go to these parties, hang out with all their former classmates, and then they were going to drive to Branson, Missouri, and stay at a hotel because they had plans the next day at Whitewater Theme Park with a larger group of friends.
That's fun. That reminds me of our senior trip. We did something
Yeah.
similar. Oh
Theme parks,
man.
man.
I hate the part of the beginning where you're like, oh man, everything's going so well for these people. Surely nothing bad can happen at this point in the story. And it's like, no.
So at around 8:30 that night, they were at a party in Battlefield, Missouri. At 10 p.m., Stacy called her mom to say that they had changed plans, and Suzie did the same. They weren't going to drive to Branson anymore. Instead, they're going to go back to Springfield and stay over at their friend Janelle Kirby's house. The drive to Branson would be about 50 minutes from Springfield, and after driving kind of like 20-ish minutes to Battlefield, then 20 minutes back to Springfield, I can imagine that they kind of just didn't want to drive anymore, and they didn't want to miss out on any more of the fun parties happening later that night.
Also, they're graduating high school. I have to imagine there was likely some drinking happening.
I also thought about that too. At 1:30 a.m. that night, they were arriving at another grad party in Springfield, but they didn't end up staying because a neighbor called the police on the party. So, scatter.
Scatter!
I just imagine, because I've never been to a party where that happened. I just imagine the like stupid high school movies where everyone drops everything and are running and jumping over fences.
This is where Kelsey's college experience comes in because I have been to a party where the police were called. It was not so dramatic because most of the people there were in college and were legally old enough to drink. But also, like, the way the word spread through the party of, like, the cops are here, the cops are here. Hey, are you old enough to drink? Because if not, the cops are here, so you need to go. And so, like, just kids are jumping over the fence to this gas station that was behind this house just to be like, oh, we weren't part of that party, officer. We are just loitering in this gas station parking lot.
Which honestly,
And then they left, and then everyone came back over the fence. That's all that happened.
incredible. So because there wasn't much going on in this party anymore, they were off to Janelle's house to sleep, except there was a problem with that. A bunch of Janelle's family had come for the graduation, so there really wasn't a lot of room.
Oh no.
So, the girls were like, that's fine. We'll just go to Suzie's house because Suzie over here has got a king-sized waterbed. So we're going to go sleep in that instead of sleep on the floor at Janelle's.
Hell yeah. I've always liked the idea of a waterbed, but I imagine in real life they're not that great.
Did you hear about there's a case that has to do with a waterbed that's like
That is for another day, Annalise. I am
well,
not
it's
emotionally
solved.
ready for the waterbed story. I
You're
know,
not,
but I'm
though.
not.
You're not. It's bad. Anyway, moving on. Horrible case. I think about it every time I think about waterbeds. It's not great. So
I wasn't gonna say it, but also me too.
So Suzie and Stacy drove their two separate cars to Suzie's house, and so they arrived at 1717 East Delmar Street around 2:15 a.m.
That's not too late for like partying.
Yeah. So at home was Suzie's mother, Cheryl Elizabeth Levitt. She was 47. Cheryl was a single mom. She had divorced Suzie's father, Brent Streeter, in 1973. She did have a second husband, Don Levitt, but they also got divorced in 1989. So it was just Suzie and Cheryl.
1970s is pretty early for getting a divorce, I imagine, especially in the South where they have a lot more traditional values. There's probably some stigma she would have faced as a single mom.
And then to get divorced again, too.
And divorced again, true. But you know what? Good for her. Good
Yeah.
for her.
So they had recently moved into that house in April. As mentioned before, her mother was a cosmetologist at a salon on West Sunshine Street where everyone loved her.
That's so cute.
She had over 250 clients.
I don't actually know if that's a lot of clients. I don't know how many clients beauticians usually have, or cosmetologist.
But good sign that she has loyal customers.
Yeah.
So Cheryl had been home all night after the graduation ceremony with the family dog, a Yorkie named Cinnamon.
Oh my god. A Yorkie named Cinnamon? That's so
It's
cute.
so cute. So she got the call from her daughter at 10:30 about the initial change in plans. At 11:15, she was talking with her friend on the phone, and in between that, she was doing some housework, refinishing a chair and painting a chest of drawers like a DIY queen.
She reminds me of my mom. My mom's been doing a lot of DIY stuff and like staining wood, making like a big old wood clock. So like very mom energy, just
Hmm,
adult child. I don't, she's doing her thing, I'm doing my thing kind of energy.
yeah. So 2:15 a.m. they come home. We move on to the morning of June 7th.
Oh no.
The group going to the water park, specifically Suzie and Stacy, were supposed to meet up at Janelle's house that morning before heading out. At 9 a.m., when the two didn't show up, Janelle calls Susie's house and leaves a message. By 12:30, Janelle's figuring her friends are just kind of sleeping in late after a night of partying and decides to go over to Susie's house with her boyfriend, Mike, to see what's going on. There were 3 cars at the house, one in the carport to the side of the house, which was Cheryl's. And then there was a curved drive at the front of the house where Susie's car was, and behind that was Stacy's car. So all the cars are there. While knocking on the door, they noticed that the porch light outside was shattered, and Mike, trying to be nice, kind of swept it up and threw the glass away.
Oh, Mike. Oh no, Mike.
As they continued to wait, they got no response, but found that the door was unlocked and decided to take a look inside. Now, that isn't so odd for this time period to leave your front door unlocked, so that wasn't suspicious in and of itself.
Yeah, and I mean, they're your friends. It's not super weird, especially if you think they're sleeping in, that you're just gonna pop in and be like, hey, we have plans.
Mhm.
But also knowing what we know, it's like, oh, just stomp all over this crime scene.
So they don't find any sign of Suzie, Stacy, or Cheryl, but they do find Cinnamon, who appears to be agitated. He came up to them, like yapping, barking, jumping, which was very unlike him.
I was gonna say that seems like normal for most Yorkies that I've met. That seems kind of normal behavior, but I mean, I don't know Cinnamon personally.
We don't know Cinnamon personally. According to what the papers say, this was kind of weird for him to do.
This poor dog. He's like, Yorkies are little dogs. It's not like they
Little.
really have much firepower behind them. And like, all three of the people, his two owners are gone. And this girl who probably came around the house quite a lot, he's at least familiar with Stacy. It's like, this poor dog couldn't do anything. I feel really bad for the dog.
I know, right? He was left behind. As they continued walking around, they noticed that all 3 women's purses were left untouched and that there were cigarettes left as well, which was odd because both Suzie and her mother were heavy smokers. They even noticed that the TV was left on.
This is kind of giving the like the Sims family murder vibes where like they walk in the house and it's like clearly in the middle of people having been living a normal life and now they're not there, so that there's something clearly wrong with that situation. But it's also like, it's not like there's blood all over the floor. It's not like
Yeah,
something super obvious, but it's just that little like that's not right. This person wouldn't leave the house like this.
a little like uncanny valley.
Yeah.
Janelle and Mike decide, okay, this is odd, but maybe they went to another friend's house before they meet up for the trip, like a quick pop over. It might not be that weird that it's there. Maybe Cheryl's stepped out real fast. It's not too odd yet. So they go over to their friend Shane's house, who hadn't seen them, who had actually been sleeping in and was missing the whole water park thing. So woke him up. They decide to go to the house again. And they keep their eye out as they're walking through the neighborhood. They stopped by the sub shop to see if maybe they stopped there to grab some food. Nothing. They come back to the house, and as they're kind of walking around taking inventory again, the phone rings, and Janelle picks it up.
Oh no.
On the other end was an unknown man who just made sexual innuendos the entire time on the phone. So Janelle's like, click. I'm not taking that. Just,
What the fuck?
hangs
What?
up. As soon as she hangs up, another call. She picks it up. More of the same. Hangs up again.
What the hell? Did a guy watch the house and knew they were there? Oh, that's so freaky and gross. I mean, that's weird and gross, like, on its own.
Yeah.
I don't, this is back in the days of landlines. Like, I'm just gonna sit in my kitchen, I know what I'm gonna do. See, I'm gonna call this phone number and I'm gonna make as many sexual, like, how good at improv are you? Did you write down sexual innuendos before? Like, just think about it. You gotta hit, you can't give him a second. If you're trying to do this harassment on the phone, you can't give him a second to break in. So you gotta have him locked and loaded. Did you write these down before calling so that you'd have them ready to go? Like, or are you just that good at improv when it comes to sexual innuendos? Like, what? And also, you're gonna spend your time on this?
It's so odd. It's so odd. So, Stacy's parents now, at this point, have been trying to get into contact with their daughter with no response for a couple of hours. Her mom, Janice, had called Janelle's house because that's the last she knew where her daughter was. Um, just wanting to get an update, was trying to ask if the girls were up, if they were heading out, only to be told that her daughter did not, in fact, stay there, and instead was at Suzie's. So you gotta imagine the mom, like, this kid did not update me on her location. Like, what is she doing? A little bit bad.
And this is like we were saying, this is the days of landlines, no cell phones. So it's not like you're gonna send a quick text to your mom. It's like in the middle
No.
of a house party. You're like, hang on, guys, I need to call my mom on the landline in the kitchen.
This really wasn't like Stacy. Stacy was normally very good at letting her parents know where she was. I guess there was one point where Stacy tried to sneak out and her mom was just there as soon as she snuck out and caught her immediately red-handed, and that was like the only time that she has ever tried to do something sneaky like that. She learned her lesson immediately and became very good at telling her mom where she was and what was going on.
I'm just imagining her trying to sneak out through the kitchen door or something, and she's it's dark, and she's real, trying to be real sneaky about it. And then the light just comes on, and then there's her mom just sitting in the kitchen with a mug of tea or something, hi,
What
what's
you
up?
doing? Yeah, Janelle was
That is
the
such a
youngest.
baller parent move.
Yes, Janelle was the
Oh,
youngest
they
of
knew. They
yeah,
knew.
yeah,
That was not coincidence. They knew exactly what was going to happen. They'd already been through it.
yeah. She had two older sisters, from my understanding, so Mama Janice knew what was up.
They knew the moves.
Yeah. So Janice then calls up the house, leaves a message at Susie's answering machine to have her daughter call her back. Having no reason to be really concerned at this moment, because, might just be there, might be sleeping, it's kind of early. The McCalls go and enjoy the summer day out on the town. But when they got home, they still had no messages from Stacy. So Janice tries calling multiple times, sounding increasingly worried. She eventually makes her way to the house, but I do want to say one source said that one of Stacy's friends, I assume Janelle at this point, had called Janice to say that all of Stacy's stuff was at the house, but she wasn't. And in some sources, it also sounded like Janelle was kind of waiting at the house at this point and had picked up the phone when Janice called one of the times and they couldn't converse. So either way, Janice is making her way over to the house. She brings one of her other daughters with her because even if they get there and Stacy's there, they're gonna take Stacy's stuff if she's not there, take her car. Like, it's just sitting in the driveway right now.
Mm-hmm.
So she takes one of her daughters with her. They go. Janice gets to the house and finds the same things that Janelle had seen earlier. Now, this is when Janice kind of starts to worry, and she wasn't the only one, because at this point, about 10 or 18 people had ended up at that house and were kind of waiting around, milling around.
No. Oh no. It's wonderful that they have this many people that are concerned for them and are looking for them, but oh no. 18 different people have been in this house by now.
And we know what happened with the JonBenet Ramsey case when you have a bunch of people milling around in a house.
And it's like the early 90s. We know from another case that they'd only just started using DNA like 5 years ago. They're not good at it yet.
So this group ends up listening to messages on the message machine, looking through Cheryl's phone book to call anyone who might know where they are. Someone at some point even suggested they make coffee in the kitchen, which was shot down by the group, but they're getting comfy.
I get that, like, when you're in this situation, your brain is trying to make like anything but something terrible like excuse for why things are the way they are. But at this point, if you're just going through a phone book, calling everybody like, "Hey, have you seen so and so?" Maybe just call the police at that point. Especially if you've been there so long that somebody's like, "Why don't we make a pot of coffee?"
Evidently, while listening to the messages, Janice comes across a quote, strange message, as she put it, but it ends up getting deleted because
Oh my
the messaging
god.
machine was one of those that would erase the messages after you listened to them. So any messages that were on that messaging machine that they were listening through were gone.
Listen. Listen. They had no way of knowing that probably. But this is why you call the police. This is why they have policies in place so this doesn't happen. Oh no.
Janice says that she doesn't remember what that message contained, which I don't blame her
She just
because I
remembers it
think
was weird.
she just remembers it was weird. I don't blame her about this though because I think they were just kind of jutting through the messages to see if there's anything important. And she's probably getting very stressed at this point. So I don't blame her for not remembering the exact contents of this message.
Yeah, but it's also like, why are you guys going through these people's voicemails? If it's gotten to that point, maybe just call the cops. Like, I mean, you don't want to waste their time if they're just like down in the way at the grocery store, but it's also like, it's hinky because like it's not really their fault, but it's also like, why didn't you call the proper authorities to do this?
Eventually, Janice, after talking to her husband Stu, thought that's enough waiting around. We're going to call the police department. Note, she did not call 911. She called the police department directly because she didn't think this was an emergency yet.
I could understand that, but also it kind of is because 3 people have been missing for several hours. But also, they are adults. They can just leave. That's a thing they're allowed to do. I don't know.
So, Officer Bookout answers the call and tells Janice that they're going to file a missing persons report. And bizarrely, asks Janice for Stacy's dental records right then and there.
Oh my god. At the very
This
least, that's inappropriate. Because, like, you're basically telegraphing you think her kid, there's like a non zero chance her kid's dead and unrecognizable so that you'll need dental. What? Don't just say that outright.
yeah, this of course freaks Janice out. But whatever. Eventually, Bookout
Poor
and
woman.
I know this poor woman is like, "Oh my god, this is this what we're going to now immediately?" So eventually, Bookout and his fellow officers arrive at the home, and after taking inventory of everything, they kind of usher all of the people that were in there out. They're like, "There's too many people in this house right now. You got to get
As
out."
long as it happens eventually.
Yeah, they take inventory and they lock the front door. And of course, Janice
Hmm.
is like, why are you doing that? Like, how would they get back in if you locked the door?"
Oh, Janice. Oh, Janice. We're past that point. I'm so sorry.
They're securing the scene, and Bookout leaves a note attached to the door that states, quote, "When you get in, please call 864-1810 and cancel the missing persons report. If they come back, that is what they're to do."
I mean, yeah, they've only been missing like at not even 24 hours at this point.
Yeah.
It is totally possible, even though they left their cars, that they went somewhere with somebody else and are going to be home. But like, I feel like the mom being like, how will they get in is like a clear denial of what's happening at this point.
Yeah.
Because while people can just go off and do something, generally speaking, they do not.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't really happen.
The next day, on June 9th, the FBI get involved, and it kind of kicks off a larger investigation. They kind of call them up, like, this is what's happening. It's starting to escalate. June 13th, the community was out searching in the woods around the area, like just walking the woods as people do during these missing cases. No avail. There's nothing there.
So, are one of them under 18? Because I understand the FBI gets involved as a matter of course when it comes to cases that involve a minor. Or was there something else about this case that, because the FBI doesn't just get involved
No. I
whenever, right?
think I was also curious about that, and I am curious about the dates of when the FBI got involved. So I think the NBC source said that they got involved this next day, but I'm not positive. So some of them just mentioned them getting involved later. I think it might also be possible that this police department was kind of not prepped for this kind of case. So they might have called it assistance because they just weren't, you know, prepared.
Clearly not if the first question that guy asks is, hey, do you have our dental records on hand? Just in case we need to compare those to something, you know? I also think it's so sad when a search gets to the point where you're just looking around the woods behind their house. Because that's such a, like, yeah, that's definitely like very valid and you can find some things, some evidence that could be really useful. But also, I think there's an undertone of like, what are you looking for here? Are you looking
Yeah.
for evidence? Are you looking for the people behind the woods and behind their house? Like, there's an undertone to these searches, I think, when they're not looking in like places a person would go to willingly. And you're like, oh, what are we thinking we're going to find?
On June 14th, the TV show America's Most Wanted brought the women's photos up to, like up on the screen, and so this brought national attention to this case. They were on TV, the story was talking about, they were like being searched for. This is national now. The police got thousands upon thousands of tips and were working around the clock, literally 12-hour shifts in and out, trying to follow all of the threads presented. I think I think that this police department was a bit overwhelmed and kind of underprepared, especially once you start getting national level thousands of tips and you're trying to hunt down all those leads. It's a pretty big, like, the magnitude of this case
It's
they
a
were not
lot.
prepared for. Yeah. But they did seem to be like running down every lead that they could. They even got a lead that there's a river in the town and that someone had seen something in the river, and they had police officers go out and literally walk the river. Like at the shallow parts, they
Oof.
literally went in and walked in the river, walked down the river at this like couple mile stretch just to see if there was anything. So I think they are doing their darndest, but I don't know if they were ready.
Mm-hmm. It always happens that way too. It's always like a sleepy town. There's like three guys who are just in the police department who are really just there to be like, hey, stop that if you're like graffitiing something, because that's like at most what happens. And then suddenly something absolutely devastatingly horrible happens, and they're like, I know how to write tickets. That's what I do every day. And now I have to search for people who are like probably knew these people at least tangentially, like
Mm-hmm.
it's a community. So it's like now I have to go find like my friend, my neighbor, a girl my daughter goes to school with. And I write tickets most of the time. That's my job most of the time.
So, what were some of the leads about what happened? First off, due to all the people walking around the house, there was very little that the police could label as evidence that hadn't been tampered with or handled already.
The voicemail machine really gets me.
I was going to say, especially the discarded porch light that Mike had slipped up and the phone messages that had been erased. As we know, the women's belongings were left at the house, including Stephanie. Um,
Stephanie's been murdered. That's why she's not in this recording.
I was gonna say, including Stacy's clothes, a lot of them, meaning that she likely only had on a t-shirt and her underwear, and that's it.
Yeah, probably dressed for bed.
Mm-hmm. One of the leads at the start of the investigation was about a neighbor and a classmate of the girls. His car had been stolen. So news reports were asking people to look out for a 1991 red Chevrolet Cavalier, but that didn't really get anything. They kind of ruled that out. They did a couple of days of talking about that and kind of urging people to look for it because it was close by. Someone could have like tried to take it away, but that didn't get anywhere. Ended up not being really relevant. A few days later, after the disappearance, a person called in a tip that a blonde woman in a green van was seen going by Cheryl and Susie's house and allegedly kind of yelled at the window, "Don't do anything stupid," and like drove off.
Like the night that it happened or the day that it
A
happened?
few days later,
Who is she
it's
yelling it to?
it's weird. I really don't understand this tip, but it comes up again later.
Huh.
So there was also another missing case of 3 women in Oklahoma that disappeared on May 29th, 1992, which the public had initially thought might be connected.
I think that's fair. That's weirdly similar.
So, Wendy Camp, her sister in law, Lisa Renee Krager, and Wendy's daughter, Cynthia Brito, were missing for like 24 years until it was revealed that Wendy had been, and the rest of them, had been murdered by her son's grandmother, Beverly No. Wendy had been in a custody battle with the father about the boy, but the boy was living with Beverly. And I guess she decided to kill Wendy in order to raise the boy herself.
Okay.
So the bodies were hidden in a septic tank that was then buried by Beverly's brother. So it's safe to say that this isn't connected because that is a highly personal motive. And even before we knew that happened, even after before the 24 years had passed, police had kind of ruled it out. It was kind of a vague similarity, but there was nothing really.
Yeah. It was worth looking into, I think, for sure, but it
Yeah,
sounds like not it.
not it.
Just we're just killing women in groups of 3 just as we're just happens.
I saw another case that I didn't look into yet, but you know how sometimes I look at Wikipedia to kind of get the gist of a case before I decide whether or not I'm going to dig into it more. There was
Yeah.
another missing 3 case that I was thinking of connecting to this one if this one wasn't going to be so long, but this ended up having enough length to it that I just kind of left it, but I might come back to that. But missing in threes is a thing.
And it's funny because like that's a lot of people to control at once. So it's an
Yes.
interesting number.
So an initial suspect was Susie's ex, Dustin Rekla. Um, Dustin had gotten into some trouble with the law when he and his 2 friends went into a Springfield mausoleum and stole golden fillings from a body.
Okay. So obviously partners and ex-partners first in the wave of list of suspects. That makes sense. And you're young, and young people do stupid shit a lot. But also, if I had been dating a person and, it didn't work out for whatever reason, but then I find out later, and not even that much later, like maybe like a year or 2 later, that that person broke into a mausoleum and ripped gold fillings out of the teeth of a dead body, because those don't just like come out. You gotta like get at it. I would have so many questions. Oh my God.
So Susie had given a statement to the police about it, and so some people thought maybe Dustin, in his anger, went to go like mess up Susie. The 2 were there, and so he killed all of them. He was in the area at the time that Susie disappeared, but I don't really think it's related to this case. This is the only thing that I could see that he got in trouble with the law with. And it was like him and his 3 buddies. They're probably being stupid teenage boys and decided, oh, we're gonna go to this thing. Like I don't think that he escalated from pulling some teeth out to murdering 3 women. It's possible. I don't really think that there's a connection there, and there really isn't any evidence to support that.
There's definitely something in the psychology of a person that is okay with desecrating a corpse that would, there's something there for sure. But also, like, it sounds like he didn't get in that much trouble if he's in the area not that much later. So it's maybe he would yell at her. I don't know. There's also something about desecrating a corpse with your 2 friends that seems very kind of cowardly to me.
It sounds honestly like a
I
dare
don't
that
think he did.
escalated.
It really does. I don't think he did this, but I am gonna roast the hell out of him for being a coward, I
What were you
guess.
doing, bro?
What was that?
And the gold fillings, I
Also,
guess, were
like,
like
gold's not
$30 worth of
that valuable? Yeah, it's not that valuable. So you've desecrated a corpse for what?
for $30.
Because you like that's clearly like a street cred thing. Even though it's
Yeah.
not really that cool, you know?
I can just imagine a group of boys be like, oh, we're gonna go break into a mausoleum.
I'm trying to imagine what this guy looks like because I'm halfway between emo guy, thin as a rail, and like jock who's just that dumb.
The fact that his nickname
And
is
I don't
also
know which it is.
Dusty gives a vibe.
It does. Dusty like a corpse. I'm just saying.
Anyway.
And yeah, I don't think he was involved, but we're gonna roast him for the next 5 minutes.
I just think it's funny. A bit of a reprieve from how heavy this is. So, Robert Craig Cox is the most well-known suspect for this case. Robert is an Army vet who worked in Springfield as an underground utility worker and had at one point worked at the same place as Stacy's dad for a while. He was convicted in 1988 for killing a Disney World employee, 19-year-old Sharon Zellers, on December 30th, 1978. However, the conviction was reversed in 1989 due to insufficient evidence.
So he maybe killed another, not at Disneyland. She just worked at Disneyland, and
She worked at, but
I'm
in
conflating
Florida.
that. In
Yeah.
Florida, okay. And so he was convicted because they thought he had evidence, and obviously that's a whole other case. We don't have time to get into it now, but like, so he maybe killed this other girl, but also then they looked at it again and were like, no, he didn't. And it's like he sounds like a blue collar worker. Maybe he's just like in a lot of like areas and has like a lot of access. I'm wondering if like that's, like I'm just trying to figure
So,
out like what about him screamed, yeah, he who killed that Disney worker. And then also these 3 women.
in 1995, this man held a 12-year-old girl at gunpoint in Decatur, Texas.
Oh, okay. So not a good guy. Not a good guy. Not like a wrongly convicted innocent man.
No.
Just bad guy maybe didn't do this specific thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which he ended up getting a life sentence for, and so he was serving that time in prison.
Well, so he kidnapped a 12-year-old. That's really, really bad. And held her at gunpoint. I'm not saying I don't think that's bad enough to get a life sentence, but like I would expect there to be more to that case if it was like did he
There is a wild discrepancy between like what things get life sentences and what doesn't. So
It's
I think
also
there was
Texas.
there's also Texas. I think there's also like a piling on of like he got 15 years for this and 15 years for that and da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That makes sense.
in 1996, Robert was being interviewed while in prison, and he said something about the missing woman. He said, quote, I just know that they are dead. That's not my theory. I just know that. There's no doubt about that. End quote.
So was he from Missouri? Did you say he was like from the area?
So at the time, he was in the area. So he went from Florida
Okay.
to Springfield to Texas.
Okay, so it's not like they were just he unprompted just talked to at a random case.
No, he had lived there during the time. Sorry, I should have made that clearer. Um,
No, no, no worries.
so
I mean, it also had been 4 years, so like from purely a true crime perspective, maybe he was just giving his
maybe
expert opinion as a criminal that he was like, no, no, whoever did this definitely killed them.
this is when police started to look into Robert in relation to the missing women. He had claimed on the morning of the disappearance that he was at church with his girlfriend, which at the time she cooperated, but then later she kind of backtracked and said that she only said that because Robert told her to.
So he's not like a good guy. So had already clearly done some sketch stuff. Maybe he just was like, I don't even want to get involved in this. I want to just be
Yeah.
ruled out immediately. I don't want to like fall into like he knows the criminal system. He doesn't want to get dragged in. Or he was involved. Like there's not like those are really the two reasons you would lie about your alibi.
Yeah. There was also he had also at one point said that he was like at his parents' house and then his parents cooperated, but there's like again, there's insufficient evidence for him to be part of this, and the police kind of believe here's the other thing. I did see in some places, and not in all places that were retelling this story, that Robert had told journalists that he would reveal where the women are after his mother died,
Is
which
his
was
mother
also a
dead?
I don't know at this point. I saw like two articles state that and the other ones didn't. So I don't really know what this man was trying to do or what he was trying to say.
Maybe he was
Some
just trying to get attention.
That's what a lot of people were thinking, is that he was just trying to get attention and notoriety, but the police kind of rule him out.
Yeah, because it doesn't sound like he's said anything that only the killer would know. He's just kind of said things that anybody could say, but also with the like weight of him being in jail for a different bad thing. So it's like
Yeah.
that
And the
alone gives
police
it weight.
do believe that the women were kidnapped by someone who had some kind of experience because it was so this is a weird way to
Clean.
put it, but it was so clean. Like there wasn't
Yeah.
a big disturbance. The women were just gone. Like there was the porch light was broken, so that was a thing. But besides that, there wasn't really much amiss. No one
It
heard
definitely
anything that
sounds
night.
like, yeah, no screams, nothing. It definitely sounds like somebody, I agree, it definitely is somebody who has experience in this. That somebody who came to the door and like crushed the light so that they couldn't see who was outside, so they'd open the door and
But
then
here's the thing,
maybe
the light
held
bulb
them
was
at
intact.
gunpoint or something. The light bulb's intact. So the light was still there. That was my big theory. Was that they like he crushed the light so that it would be dark.
But my one idea might be that if he was trying to drag someone out of the house, maybe one of them smashed it trying to get away or trying to like squirm out. Like that would make sense to me. Otherwise, I don't have no idea why that light is shattered. Or the
Maybe like a
outside
show of
casing and not the light
force.
bulb.
Yeah, like what? Maybe he like smashed it and then do we know if the light was still working? Like maybe he untwisted it some or something so that it would be that was my big thing. I was like, oh, he obviously did that so it would be dark so they couldn't see him when they opened the door.
Maybe.
But
I
I
don't know
got
the
nothing
specifics
then.
on whether or not it still worked. I knew that the light bulb was intact, but who knows? Maybe it was still like a little bit unscrewed. So
I mean, why
either
would you do
way,
it that way though? Why wouldn't you just break it?
yeah. Yeah, why don't you just
But
go
okay.
full ham?
So it's like it's past 2 in the morning, maybe 3 or 4. They go to the door. They at some point break the light for some reason. Who knows? I would imagine the mom would probably have answered the door because she's the owner of the house. Maybe one of the girls would have answered, but they'd been partying, so I imagine they would have been like upstairs sleeping or something. And then he probably a gun. I'm imagining a gun. And maybe there were more people. Maybe it was more than one, because 3 is a lot to control. It begs the question if they knew that many people were in the house, because, like, even they didn't know they were gonna be staying overnight that night until they
True,
did,
but there
unless they were
were
watching the
that
house.
many cars. My question also
True.
is there's a couple of questions. One, TV was on. So I think it was pretty soon after they arrived home. Cheryl was
Mm,
probably still up waiting for whatever or something was happening. So TV was
true.
on. So
That
someone
makes
was up
sense.
at the time. Two, I do have questions about whether Stacy's clothes, like she had gotten ready for bed, or they had come in, the people were already there, and it was taken off of her. But there's no sign of a struggle. So again, weird. She still had her underwear on. So, or they were taken. Either way,
Yeah.
weird.
I
So
don't think they did anything, like, violent in the house other than, like, holding them,
yeah,
like, at weapon point, because you're right, there's, like, nothing in the scene that indicates any sort of
yeah,
struggle or any violence. So I imagine they, like, got them out of the house. The calling at the phone
is weird.
could be nothing. Could be
Yeah,
nothing. Could just be some weird prank dude. Or it could be maybe somebody was watching the house and saw them come back in and were like, I'm gonna freak them out because I'm
yeah,
weird, I'm crazy. I stole 3 women and now I'm crazy. I'm gonna call and do this weird thing. 3 people is a lot to control, and, like, you would have to
it
plan
is.
that. And they didn't even
It
know they were
is.
gonna be there till the night of. Did they change plans? Were there more people? It could be anything.
That's what's so confusing. And there was the three cars outside, so you would have an idea that there was multiple people inside. There's not
Yeah, a
three cars for
minimum
one
of
person
3.
sitting there. Yeah. So you know that there's quite a few people in there. Again, I think that they probably, because I gotta imagine if Susie and Stacy came home and the porch light was broken, that they might have tried to clean it up or they might have been spooked out a little bit. So I gotta imagine that
It
all
would have given
happened
them
after.
pause.
Yeah. I have to imagine that all happened after they had gotten home.
Mhm.
So
I
someone
think
at
they were
some
getting ready
point,
for bed too. It doesn't really make
yeah,
sense for them to have one of them undress partially and not any of the others and just her. I think you're
yeah,
right.
it's odd.
What the hell
In
happened here?
2002, in
That's a
2002, the
jump.
green van emerged again. The
Same lady?
police got a call. The police got a call from two women about a green van being driven by a couple of men this time near a concrete company. So police trying to track down this lead, see what comes of it, brings cadaver dogs. They did find bones in 3 different spots.
Okay, that's very normal, very not weird. But also, like, how did these women, like, obviously they had more information than it's a green van. They had, like, a picture of it. But, like, 10 years later, you see this van, you're like, that's the van. That's the fucking van.
So they dig up these bones. After testing, they're too old to be the missing woman.
Too old.
They're somebody
There are
else's bones.
other random human remains that are just, they're just here. It's fine.
A year later, the police went to Cassville to some farmland where they found one, a part of a green van, and two, possible blood. The blood thing was then tested and it was inconclusive about what it was and what was going on. So that was like dead end.
And they're definitely sure it's the green van and not just somebody else's green van, green bumper.
I cannot tell you what's going on with this van. I'm so confused about what is going on with this van.
And I was so curious as to what, like, a tip or some kind of evidence or tracking down, like, all the different green vans in the state, like, what led them to the farm. I also love the inconclusive blood stain. Could be blood, could be barbecue sauce. This is the South. They do love their barbecue. Could be either.
So in 2007, a local writer hired an engineer to use ground penetrating radar at the Cox South Hospital after rumors that the women had been buried there prior to construction.
Oh, okay. I was gonna be like, what about this hospital is like, oh, they definitely got buried there. But if it's a construction site at the time, that makes sense.
So the radar did pick up at 3 spots that were roughly the same size. But when the writer had submitted this to the police never requested to destroy or search the parking lot where those spots went off. Their talk said that it was too costly to destroy the whole parking lot just to see what these 3 spots are, and that they were like a little suspicious about whether or not it would actually be anything. So nothing was
I
done.
could understand that because like the ground penetrating radar, especially in the early 2000s, wasn't necessarily like there's something there, but there's nothing
Mm-hmm.
that like goes off on the little machine that's like there's definitely human remains right here. Like so say the special ground signally things. So it could also be nothing. It could be leftover pavement, it could be, random pieces of construction equipment or wood. I understand that. But I would have at least hired my own, like something through the police department to have somebody else run through to like confirm the results if they
True.
were worried
True.
about the validity of them.
So Susie and Cheryl were legally pronounced dead in 1997, but Janice, Stacy's mom, refuses to pronounce her daughter dead until she knows for sure that she is dead.
I understand that. I also imagine, like, for them, because you were saying they kind of just assumed she hadn't gotten back to them and kind of went about their day. I imagine there's a lot of guilt around that.
Yeah.
And then also then having to pronounce your child dead after that, like, is too much. I get that.
To this day, what happened is still unknown, despite upwards of 5,000 tips to the police. This is an unsolved case. There is no bodies found. All that we know is that they disappeared that night in 1992, and we know nothing else.
Holy crap. And like literally all we know for sure is that 3 women just vanished one night. Everything
Yep.
else is pretty much speculation.
Yep.
And I'm not going to say it was the family's fault for traipsing through the crime scene because I honestly don't think there was that much to be found there based on the state they found it in. But we'll never know because
Mm-hmm.
they've been all over it. And that voicemail could have been something. I wonder what about it. Like she doesn't remember what it said, but she remembers it was weird. But what about it was weird? I wonder.
I know. I'm so
Like it
curious about what
clearly
was in
stuck
that
out to her
voicemail.
as weird. And it could have been one person. It could have been multiple. I'm starting to lean towards multiple. But then also,
Because
like,
it's
were they
so
watching the
clean to get
house?
3 people out. Like, what were you doing to
Yeah,
get the 3 of them out?
without
Unless you
struggle.
had, yeah.
Had one of them.
Yeah, unless you had a gun and you were holding it to one of them and they like cooperated in order to not be shot, which could make sense. But
Yeah,
that's also no one heard anything
that's such
that
a
night
risk.
that they reported. It's just there's so many unknowns and so many question marks.
I would think somebody knocked on the door. It's like very soon after the girls got home. The mom answers because she's still watching TV. Somebody's there, or somebody's, maybe multiple people, holding, there's got to be a gun. I've got no evidence that there's a gun, but a gun is kind of the thing that would make people leave without too much fight. And then they have her call the girls downstairs. One of them has gotten ready for bed. She's in her t shirt and underwear. They see the mom being held at gunpoint. They're young. They're like 17, 18. They don't know what to do. So they just cooperate because they're scared. And then they load them into a car and then something happens. Probably murder. I I'm unfortunately I don't think these people are alive.
It's
But
been
like
30
that's
years at this point.
it's been 30 years. They could be in that hospital parking lot. Like they do whatever horrible vile thing they decided they were going to do with these people. They're dead at the end of it and then they are like, "Ah, oh, shoot, we got to get rid of these bodies." And then there's this open construction site and then they just kind of, you know, bury them and then concrete gets poured and it's like I feel like that does make sense. Obviously, it sounds like the evidence that we have for that's a little bit up in the air, but it makes sense. But also, like, you didn't even know they were going to be there. And so at the very least, you were going after the mom, and then 2 more people showed up, and you decided you were going to go for it anyway. What the hell happened here?
I know. And that is such a risk. You just like tripled what you were trying to do, and that is no guarantee that that is going to go well. But unfortunately, this person got away with it.
Yeah, like literally anything could have happened. They could, I will admit, there is a small chance that they could still be alive somewhere. Maybe it was like a human trafficking thing, but it doesn't really follow those usual patterns. We have absolutely no idea what happened here, which is
No.
horrific that can just happen, that you're just home, you're at your friend's house, you're at your own home, and then somebody opens the door and then you're gone. I'm very disappointed, Annalise. How could you bring this to me?
That is where I'm gonna leave it. I have kind of imagined that our table is on their porch, and I don't know what I can't actually. I have seen a picture of their house. I don't think they have like. Let me look at this house.
They have like
I
a
kind of
yard.
imagine us having our table like it's nighttime. It's kind of foggy. We're
Spooky.
sitting at this table. There's like the porch light with it shattered, but it's emitting a small light.
The light bulb's still going.
Yeah, they have a very small porch. So it's not like a wraparound porch. It's like a little one. But like we're like sitting in the
Well, it's
yard.
just us. We
that.
could be sitting at like a bistro table.
I don't think a bistro table would even fit on this. Let me show you the picture.
Oh yeah, that's not really a porch. That's like a front space. But they've
Very
got like
small.
a little yard. We could put our
yeah.
We could put our
tables in the yard.
front.
I kind of imagine like a foggy kind of night where you like it's very spooky. I have a whole picture of this.
The people who live in that house now who maybe have no idea that this happened in this home are like, what are these people doing on our yard? That always weirds me out, is that things can happen in these homes and then like they just change hands and then new people live in it. Like if somebody dies in the house, they have to disclose it. Do they have to disclose it if like 3 people vanished from this house? Do they know? Should we tell them?
Know with how popular this is.
True. That's true.
Anyway, that's all we have for today. Thanks for stopping by our table of disappointment. You can push in your chair, and we'll see you the next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.